to speak in English because I would like to leave Marco out of the debate by speaking in Portuguese, and I'm sure that you all understand English perfectly well since you understood the previous speaker. I think that you all had access to the samples of the texts that I sent to Professor Teresa, whom I am thanking officially and with a C, and all my colleagues for the invitation to speak to you today, this afternoon, which gives me immense pleasure. I'm going to be, since I only have 10 minutes, rather provocative. In the sense that I picked up a topic which I think is a crucial topic for the understanding of the Victorian minds, if such a thing exists, but in a very general way. And I picked those texts because they, in my view, illustrate an apparent contradiction, a kind of opposite position by Carlyle and by John Stuart Mill addressing the same topic or the same issue. But my point is that this opposition is more apparent than real. Because the first thing that I would like to stress is that in spite of facing completely different approaches towards, the text, stylistic approaches which are absolutely divergent by Carlyle and by Mill, the title of the texts are The Nigger Question and the text by Mill is The Negro Question. They were both published in a periodical of the 40s, Fraser's Magazine. The first one as a full article, the second one as a kind of answer filled with indignation by Stuart Mill on the kind of position Carlyle expressed on the Negro or nigger question. But in fact, my provocative position is that they both shared this very deeply ingrained colonial Victorian discourse. They were both, they condemned, both of them, the entire idea of colonialism, colonization, and whatever came after that. So we need to distinguish between being a colonialist, as Mill certainly was, Carlyle obviously was as well, from slavery. Slavery needs to be addressed as a more, in Victorian terms, a philanthropic question. Colonialism is a political, economical, discursive situation in Victorian England. And so I thought that by bringing to you these two major authors of the 19th century, writing on the same issue, you might, be in touch with the surface of ideas through this kind of discourse, but then you need to pay attention to what lies deeper than the words, which are the concepts which illuminate and enable us to understand what is not immediately visible. Since I only have 10 minutes, I'm going to go on, because I'm going to bring to you not only a couple of ideas on this provocative position, which you are obviously free to contradict, but I'm also going to show you another way of thinking about these things, which is visual. So, in order to understand directly with Carlyle and Mill, you need to understand the historical context. My source, although I have other originals, this was published in 1971, the first time the two essays were published together, the essay by Carlyle and the essay by Mill. So bringing them together was not something which people easily did in the 19th century, but we can do that now. And we need to understand the issue of the emancipation of slaves and in British Empire in 1833, and the kind of impact which it had. It curtailed the supply of cheap labour and cut into the artificial profit margins enjoyed by the West Indian sugar planters. Then plantation subsidies ended, making this situation even worse. So you had this kind of stressing of the opposition of the white owners of the land and of, sugar canes and so on, and the black workers who worked on the land. You need to understand that the 40s were also the years of the potato famine in Ireland, and this led to starvation at home and immigration. Many Irish people emigrated to England, Scotland, South Wales, North America and Australia, and the decade began to be known as the Hungry 40s. Carlyle wrote at length about the issues of poverty, misery in the Hungry 40s. And so one of the issues he touches upon in the legal question is the comparison between the fate and the plight of the Negro population in the Caribbean and the white workers coming from Ireland or elsewhere in London and in other major industrial cities. And he thinks that they are, all of them, a result of liberalism, capitalism let loose, and a new kind of mentality which provided what for Johnson was very important, a kind of enlightened despotism, so to speak. And again, to understand Carlyle and Mill in this context, we need to understand also that the liberal mind of the 19th century provided for a proliferation of associations, friendly societies. Any kind of topic was good for people coming together, joining forces, talking about that, publishing a periodical, and from friendly societies of workers to philanthropical societies. All kinds of societies were happening. Carlyle wrote in 1829, or published, a paper called Signs of the Times, where he touched upon this issue as well. Nothing now is done by hand. Everything is done mechanically. People do not think independently. They need to find, a group where they share ideas, and in a way, this group is an intermediary between their own individual position and the way they express their position in public. And so the Anti-Slavery Society was founded in 1823, and after some time, 10 years later, it gave its fruits and slavery was abolished. Carlyle's voice was that of the disenchanted colonial aristocracy abroad, and more ambiguously, the distressed English working classes and Irish peasants closer to hand, combined under the racialized aggrandizement of whiteness. And Mill's, by contrast, was that of the enlightened Victorian abolitionism. So here, then, are to be found the two prevailing pillars of 19th century racial theory. Carlyle represented the bold claim to the Negroes' inherent inferiority, articulated by racist science of the day, and Mill, on the other hand, was the principal spokesperson for the Europeans' historically developed superiority, though he temperately acknowledged the influence of ancient Egyptians on Hellenic Greeks at the end of this essay. And so we may find these two alternative attitudes, the paternalistic responsibility which was expressed by Carlyle, who defended very much, or who presented the Middle Ages as a kind of alternative to the industrial and urban age. The Middle Ages being, the kind, or establishing a relationship of responsibility from the, by the aristocracy towards the so-called peasants and lower classes or lower groups in society. And so he thought that the answer to the social problems in Victorian England might be the reinstatement of a new kind of chivalry. He talks very often about that in many texts, and reinstating this responsibility. Those who have, as Marx might say, the means of production should take care of those who work and protect them from adversity and so on. So it is a paternalistic responsibility. On the other hand, Mill was an abolitionist, a supporter of free trade. He worked most of his life in colonial administration. This is something we need to remember. Slavery was wrong for him on utilitarian grounds, in that it produced much more pain than would liberty and equal opportunity. We need to think that utilitarianism, the greatest happiness of the greatest number, those Bentham theories were very influential on Mill, who was inventing aspects of Benthamite, and so utility was important for him. And it is for this reason that he considered slavery inherently inhumane. So he talks, but nevertheless, just to show how the colonial spirit was ingrained in the vocabulary, it is impossible to escape the language, and I think that discourse is about, studying discourse is about that, how we are limited by language in order to express our opinions. It's impossible for John Stuart Mill to escape from this matrix of opposition, the black laborer and the white proprietor. And so blacks and whites are always present in this discourse. And although in favour of the abolition of slavery, Mill was not against colonization, quite the contrary, as his work in the English list in the accompanying documents, as well as the principles of political economy. So his was, as I might say, a benevolent despotism, a colonialism with a human face. And we might, I need to skip this about liberalism, because I think that I only have 2 minutes, 4 minutes. So just, I'm going to pass on to something different. In order to understand how race was an issue and how race was present in 19th century, particularly Victorian discourse, I picked from an author called David Theobald in the book called The Threat of Race, Reflections on Racial Neoliberalism, his position of two contemporary currents of thought, two competing historical frames in order to think about race and the conceptualization of racism. The dominant view, which among academic commentators takes racism to acquire its explicit modern expression only from the 19th century onwards, and a contrasting view which goes much further back. It might be interesting to explore these, but I don't have time now. In a way, these two issues may be, in a way, addressed, as I said, in a deeper conceptual distinction, cutting across the history of racial thought, when we think about racial naturalism and racial historicism. So to explain race through biology mostly, and through explain race through history and culture. And nowadays, these two issues are very much under scrutiny. Finally, I would just like to show you something, I want to share with you something which I think is, so let me just give you this quote. At the heart of the dispute, concerns the distinction between what and I'm quoting Goldberg, characterized as racial naturalism and racial historicism. A dispute, as I have argued at length in The Racial State, and on which arguments I draw in The Threat of Race, far exceeds the mid-19th century debate between Carlyle and Mill. True, in contrast with Carlyle, Mill seems positively progressive, but his progressivism embeds, yes, that's the word, stereotyping presumptions about racial otherness. So this is, to conclude, in a way, the paradoxes and the contrasts between Carlyle and Mill. What I'd like to show you is how slavery might be represented otherwise. And I think that you should get to know this painting, the slave ship, originally titled Slavers Thrown Overboard, the Dead and Dying, Typhoon Coming On, painted in 1840, or at least exhibited for the first time in 1840, and showing the concern many people like Turner had about the cruelty of slavery. So slavery as something different, humane, different from colonialism. It is again what I would like to stress. And I brought here a number of details from the painting, which arose many criticism some said that, as we're going to see next, that this is not at all a realistic painting, which obviously is not, because you see floating things that should immediately be sinking, like the chains that chained the black slaves who were thrown overboard, and are seen here floating, and you can see other fantastic, in my opinion, details of this incredibly impressive painting. So fish eating a part of the leg of the human body. You can see it here and here as well. And just another. So this fish, another view of this extraordinary painting. To John Ruskin, in 1843, in modern painters, the slave ship was probably the most important painting by Turner. And so you have here, my point is that you have here different approaches, both literary and visual, to the issue of slavery and how slavery is, in fact, a very humanitarian issue. But it doesn't conflict with, in a way, it provides a good alibi, I think, for many people thinking that colonialism was indeed a legitimate and natural and absolutely defensible way of dealing with commerce, with the colonies, with these new lands which had been discovered. I also put here, since Carlyle talks about the distressed little women, so these women representing the lumbar proletariat, so to speak, in England in the 40s, how emigration was considered to be a solution. So in a way, we have another form of slave trade. It's not about black people being collected in the coast of Africa and shipped to America. It is about mainly women, but many men as well, being put together in the hope of ships and shipped to America and to Australia as a kind of benevolent solution to the problem of overpopulation and the problem of lack of work. And these women would arrive in Australia. There are Australian newspapers talking about this in the 1850s. Obviously, it seems much more civilized, this kind of representation in the press from the slave ships. But I think, in a way, the ideological connection is not very distant from one thing to the other. Thank you so much.